healthy churches, they are not built by a few stars, but by a lot of ordinary people like you and me and those that are watching today, just serving together. Each of us doing our individual part. That's what a healthy church looks like. Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to A Deeper Dive. Josh Kinney alongside Pastor Patrick Wheeler.
What's up, Josh?
What's up, buddy?
It's good to be here, man.
Good to be with you. Great to be with our Cornerstone Anywhere family. And today we're continuing in a series that we've been in for the last several weeks called Better Together.
It's good to hear that because it doesn't always feel like we're better together.
Yeah.
So when you hear it, you're like, this is the reminder of what we are created for.
It's very, very timely for us to be talking about that, just in light of everything, certainly like within our church, there's just exciting things happening. And sometimes we do need to be reminded of just that we are better together. But as we're jumping, I was going to say before, but as we're jumping in today, I have to talk to you about something, okay?
Yep.
You talked about the 2004 Detroit Pistons.
The team nobody wanted, but everybody loved.
I will tell you, that was the year I graduated high school.
Okay.
And I loved the Pistons that year.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I look back and I'm like, who did I like on that team? I think that you actually captured, I was like, I actually just think I liked the team aspect that existed.
As a basketball player yourself, you might have been very similar to the Detroit Pistons. You're kind of a Detroit Pistons guy, is what I always called you.
The bad boys.
The bad boys.
No, in all seriousness, I think you illustrated, you highlighted something that is really, really important with the Pistons. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, there was something really unique about this team. This team of the Pistons, what they did is there was no reason that anybody thought that they should win, except that they all played their role in a really significant way. A lot of times in sports, you see people trying to get the stats that get the salary coming up, and it seems like currently we're more consumed with that ever. Like, how do we push our own name ahead? The Pistons weren't really about that. They were about what is it going to take for us to win, and I'll do whatever role I need to. I'll give up whatever I need to give up. I'll give up shooting the ball if it helps my team win. And it was neat. You can always see people on every team doing that, but it's neat to see the starters and stars of the team who are really taking that role.
And I love the connection there that we relate that to the church.
Yeah.
And healthy churches, they are not built by a few stars, but by a lot of ordinary people like you and me and those that are watching today, just serving together. Each of us doing our individual part. That's what a healthy church looks like.
Well, and even if some people are more visible and get more credit than others, what you know when you're in it is there are people who really hold this place together. And you don't see them most of the time. You don't see them. So I think it's super neat to think about how we're better together, and just remember that no matter what credit you get here on this earth, there's someone who is getting credit in heaven for the things that are done in quiet to hold the team up.
Yeah, definitely.
It's the heart of a servant.
It is. And I think one of the key thoughts, the key takeaways from that is just that church becomes more powerful when people stop consuming and they start contributing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, let's talk a little bit about a passage of scripture that you touched on. And I think even just as you and I were talking ahead of this, there's something to clarify in what's going on in Galatians 6.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, I'm going to read verses 2. I'm going to read verse 2 and kind of through verse 5, and let's unpack it a little bit.
Even before you jump there, can I set the scene? So what's happening to the church in Galatia is they have this very specific thing that's happening. We read about it in chapter 5. Many people know Galatians 5 because we learn about the fruits of the Spirit. And so Paul's trying to teach the church, what does it mean to live in the Spirit? And he shares there's freedom that comes in living in the Spirit. And here's how we'll know if we're living in the Spirit. There's all these ways that we know it. And then we jump into 6, and he gives a couple things. Right?
So this is exactly, thank you for that setup. I'm going to start in verse 2. Okay, so it says, share each other's burdens, and in this way, obey the law of Christ. And if you think you're too important to help someone, you are only fooling yourself. You are not that important. Pay careful attention to your own work, and then you will get the satisfaction of a job well done, and you won't need to compare yourself to anyone else. And then, well, I think this is kind of like where we got to contrast some things here. Verse 5, for we are each responsible for our own conduct. It's pretty interesting. He says that we're each responsible for our own conduct. And then back in verse 2, he says to share each other's burdens.
Yeah. And I think when we think about sharing in the burdens of other people, there are people that pop into our head that you're like, they always have burden and they always need our help. And there's this selfishness attitude where we go, and that can't be our job to help them, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm the only one who feels this, but you're like someone who always needs that. We are called to share in the burdens, but then on the flip side, he says, take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And you're like, these are the things that are at tension in our culture.
Yep.
Is, well, I am taking care of myself. That's why I can't help in the burdens. But there's two very different words that are being used here.
I really, really like what you're saying, because if we were to look at these verses independent of one another, right? And they're not independent. I mean, they're literally in almost the same paragraph and the same, in the same thought. But if we were to isolate those passages of scripture from one another, we could justify one way or the other. And the important part of it, and I think this is what you're saying, is that this is not a contrast. These aren't competing ideas.
Yeah.
It's actually in the totality of that thought that Paul is saying it's not either or here.
Yeah. Yep.
It's both.
Yep. One of the things that pops in my head is it's even this, as I shared, this different picture of the burdens that we'll call boulders and the burdens that we'll call backpacks.
Yes.
And the burden of a boulder is when the world and the weight of what's happening in your life has crushed you that you can't possibly pick it up. These are the burdens we're supposed to carry for other people.
Yep.
Because the reality is one person can't get that up by themselves. And our pride makes us think, I'll never be in that situation. We feel this in my family whenever we pass someone who is homeless with little kids. They'll ask questions of like, Dad, well, why would they do that? Why? And one of the things that my wife and I always try to share is to go, hey, the spot that they're in could be a spot that we're in if we didn't have the support that we have around us.
Yeah.
And so just trying to put what someone else is going through could be the same spot we're in. And I think it's interesting as we think about carrying other people's burdens to go, you know what? We could end up in the same spot and need someone to carry them for us as well.
And not in verse 2 and not in verse 5, but I think it was right there in verse 3 or 4. I think it was verse 3 where he says, if you think you're too good to help someone else, you're thinking yourself as way too important.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think about that so much in being a part of the church my whole life. I think of people who were focused on their own thing and never thought about carrying the burdens of other people.
Yeah.
They never thought about it. And then something in their life switched and they needed people and they didn't have anybody. The one that I feel it the most with is through the years when people ask, hey, can the youth group come help me move? And I go, well, you don't have a relationship with anybody who can help you move. They can't do that, you know, but who we can help move are people who have a burden that they're not supposed to carry on their own. The widow in our church who is trying to figure out what it means to deal with some really hard things in her life. She doesn't need to move her own furniture.
Yeah, that's altogether
different. The youth group could help with that.
Yep.
The people who didn't ever help carry the burdens of other people, sometimes the very sad news is, well, you didn't commit to the church in the way that you feel the benefit. Yeah. And that's not a punishment. It's just, this is why it really matters to not think that you're more important than helping carry other people's burdens, because it flips and you might need to do it as well.
Yeah. I want to just touch on this Boulder's backpack thing, because you've touched on it, but some of the examples are like a boulder would be a medical crisis, right? Mm-hmm. It's a overloaded single parent, whereas a backpack is sometimes it's just a poor personal choice that you've made, or it's wanting some comfort or wanting some luxury instead of being content with what you actually have.
I think of it sometimes. I think of people who share with me, like, I've just been planning this trip with my boys forever. I've been planning this trip with my girls forever, and I just don't have the money right now. And they feel like that's a boulder. And you're like, actually, that's just a backpack. You can save for what you think you need for your self-care. That's not something that someone else needs to solve for you, as much as you work it in your head that it is. And this idea of a backpack that's shared in verse 5, it is what is happening in the original language is Paul is telling them and equating them to soldiers and how soldiers have to carry their own pack.
Yeah,
But what
exactly.
we know about the battlefield is that sometimes someone needs to carry another soldier's pack, and that's when something horrible has gone wrong, right?
Yeah, and that's what that's a great transition point, because one of the things you shared is that community helps carry burdens, but everyone still has responsibility for their own walk, right? And there's times where soldiers just got to like link arms and like help carry fellow soldier or move fellow soldier from point A to point B. But that's only sometimes, right? And that's when it is a dire situation as opposed to just the everyday. And there's a reason why, we're using the soldier illustration. Like, there's training that goes into it, conditioning that helps the soldier to be able to do that. They're physically and prepared to do such. So, hey, as we're wrapping up today, okay, so this idea, this conversation around serving, giving, ownership, all right? And it just happens in Western culture, specifically in the Western church, where we drift into consumer culture. We allow consumer culture to drift into church as well. So let's talk a little bit about that.
There's an illustration that pops in my head of the group project.
Okay.
I remember in school, and I'll just be honest, sometimes I chose my partner because I knew that partner was going to carry a lot of the weight of the work and I would have to do less. And I think maybe you've been on the other side of that where you're doing the work and other people are carrying that for you. I think I maybe have been in multiple sides, but usually it's like, who's going to be the best person to be on the team with us? And I think in the church, one of the things that's a little bit tricky.
Let's talk about this for just a second. Okay? Just have fun with it. I mean, we've group projects, school, all those things. You can remember times where you got to pick your group, and you remember times where the teacher picked the group for you.
When you look around and you're like, oh no, I'm the one who's got to carry the weight.
She thought I was the one? Come on.
I have names of people like from grade school that pop in my head when I think about being in a group project with them would be a really good thing.
Yeah,
really
definitely.
Good move for me.
Keep going on that thought though.
Well, I just think about it in the church, and I think that there are a lot of people. Let me say it this way. I think there's a tendency that we have to depend on other people to carry the weight of the project that God has called us to bring to it. And that doesn't mean that there's not seasons where people are more mature and understand what they should do. But I would just like push it back on all of us to say, now, what does it look like to bring all of your gifts to the project and not be depending on a grade that didn't come from the effort that you put in?
Definitely. Well, let's talk about this idea as we're kind of like wrapping up. This idea around contribution, because I think one of the things I, just taken away from is that you can't build deep community while staying disconnected from contribution.
Yeah.
Like you've got to contribute something if you want to feel any type of depth.
Yeah. And I hate it. There are so many times where I talk to people who need depth in their relationships for the season that they're in, but you can't microwave that a lot of times.
No.
And it's like you're pouring into this so that you can have it when you need it. And it's not a selfish thing. You're pouring into this because others need you, but you're pouring into this so you can have it when you need it. And I think of when people invest in others without a perceived benefit, like, hey, I'm investing in these people who might not even know how to tell me thank you, or I'm caring for these people that I might not even get credit for till heaven. There's just something special about that, because the few times that those people end up needing community, they see that they are so loved and they are so cared for. And it's not the kind of thing that you're too far gone from. It's just the kind of thing that you need to start doing to go help carry other people's burdens. And so whatever it is for you, if you've got time, you need to plug into serving. Yeah. If you have great resources, you need to think about giving those to other people. If you're an encourager, don't hold your compliments in just to advance your work or your social schedule. Hold them in to help encourage and make the church a better place.
To lift things up and not to leave them as is, or even worse than that.
And it's so good to use those skills outside of the church.
Definitely.
But this message that we're having through this whole series is Better Together. There's a responsibility to help hold up the church that each one of us has.
Yes. A closing thought, kind of a question, if you will. statement. Churches get healthier when people stop asking, what do I prefer? And they start asking, how can I help us become better together?
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for tuning in today.